Nigeria, a nation rich in land, rich in people, and rich in promise. From fertile fields to flowing oil, from bustling markets to untapped potential, Nigeria has everything a great economy needs. Yet for decades the question has remained the same. How did a nation so blessed become a nation so burdened? This is not a story of opinions. It is not a story of blame. It is a story of history, a story of decisions made, paths taken, and opportunities missed, from colonial design to independence, from oil wealth to economic struggle. This is the true economic story of Nigeria. Nigeria, a nation of over 200 million people, one of the most resource-rich countries in the world, a land blessed with fertile soil, oil, gas, rivers, minerals, and human talent. Yet, for decades, Nigeria has struggled with poverty, instability, and economic hardship. To understand how this happened, we must go back to the very beginning, before independence, before oil, before the promise, and before the disappointment. Pre-colonial economic life. Long before Nigeria became a country in 1914, the land was home to powerful kingdoms, empires, and city-states. The economy was simple, but effective. People produced what they needed. They farmed, they traded, they crafted, they governed themselves. In the north, trans-Saharan trade thrived. In the west, organized markets flourished. In the east, palm produce supported regional trade. There was no central Nigeria, but there was economic purpose. The British arrival and economic restructuring. When the British arrived, their interest was not development, it was extraction. In 1914, the British merged diverse regions into one entity, Nigeria, not because the people were the same, but because administration was cheaper. From that moment, Nigeria's economy was redesigned. The goal was clear: produce raw materials, export them to Britain, import finished goods back into Nigeria. Nigeria became a supplier, not a manufacturer. Colonial economic model under colonial rule. Railways were built, not to connect Nigerians, but to move crops to ports. Ports were developed to ship goods out, not build industries. Education was limited, just enough for clerks, not innovators. Each region was assigned a role. The north produced ground nuts and cotton. The west produced cocoa. The east produced palm oil and palm kernel. This system worked, but only for export. There was no serious industrialization, no long-term economic independence planned. Nigeria was profitable, but not empowered. Regional autonomy before independence. One important truth must be told. Even under colonial rule, Nigeria operated with regional economic autonomy. Each region controlled its resources, generated its revenue, developed at its own pace, competed economically with others. This competition created progress. Cocoa money built schools in the west. Palm oil funded development in the east. Groundnuts sustained the north. There was accountability, because failure was local. The road to independence. By the late 1950s, Nigeria was preparing for self-rule. Politicians debated politics, but the economy was stable. Nigeria exported more than it imported. Government spending was controlled. Debt was minimal. Foreign reserves existed. Nigeria was not rich, but Nigeria was financially healthy. 1960. Independence arrives on October 1st, 1960. Nigeria became independent. Leadership was shared. Prime Minister, Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa. President, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, largely ceremonial. The economy they inherited was strong by African standards. Agriculture made up over 60% of national income. Cash crops earned foreign exchange. The Nigerian pound was strong, even stronger than the US dollar. Nigeria fed itself. Nigeria exported food. Nigeria lived within its means. Why the early years worked? These early years worked because regions still controlled their resources. Production was valued over consumption. Government spending was disciplined. Corruption existed, but it was limited. There was vision. There was competition. There was hope. Nigeria stood at the edge of greatness. By the mid-1960s, Nigeria was barely 5 years old as an independent nation. But the unity was fragile. The political system was young, and trust among regions was weak. The economy still stood on a solid foundation. But politics was beginning to poison it. Politics before the fall Nigeria operated a parliamentary system. Power rested heavily on regional alliances. Elections were contested fiercely. Allegations of rigging became common. Ethnic loyalty began to override national interest. Economic decisions were increasingly influenced by politics, not planning. Tension was rising, and the warning signs were ignored. 1966. The first military coup. In January 1966, Nigeria experienced its first military coup. The civilian government was overthrown. Key political leaders were killed. The military stepped into power, claiming to restore order. Major General Johnson Aguiyi Ironsi became head of state. This moment marked a turning point. For the first time, democracy was suspended. The constitution was weakened. Military decrees replaced civil law. The economy entered uncertain territory. Centralization of power. One of the most significant economic changes occurred quietly. The military centralized power. Regional autonomy began to disappear. Control over resources shifted toward the federal center. This decision would later shape revenue allocation, resource control, economic inequality, what once encouraged competition, now encouraged dependence, counter-coup and escalating tensions. Later in 1966, a counter-coup took place. Leadership changed again. Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon emerged as head of state. But by now, trust had collapsed. Ethnic violence spread. Millions were displaced. Economic activity slowed sharply. Investors pulled back. Production declined. Fear replaced confidence. 1967 to 1970. The Nigerian Civil War. In 1967, Nigeria descended into civil war. For 3 years, the nation fought itself. The economic cost was massive. Resources were diverted to war. Factories shut down. Farms were abandoned. Infrastructure was destroyed. Human capital, Nigeria's greatest asset, was lost. War economy and survival mode. During the war, government spending skyrocketed. Normal economic planning. Stopped emergency decisions replaced strategy. Nigeria's economy shifted from growth to survival. Everything revolved around winning the war. Long-term development was postponed. Post-war declaration. No victor, no vanquished. In 1970, the war ended. The government declared, no victor, no vanquished. Reconstruction began, but the economy Nigeria emerged with was different, more centralized, more militarized, more dependent on the federal government. And just as the nation tried to heal, a new force entered the story. The arrival of oil as a dominant force. Crude oil had been discovered earlier, but now global oil prices were rising rapidly. Oil revenue began flowing in large volumes. Suddenly, Nigeria had money. A lot of money. This wealth would redefine the economy, for better and for worse. shift from agriculture to oil. As oil income increased, farms were neglected, export crops declined, food imports increased. Why farm? When oil paid faster. Why plan long-term? When money arrived monthly. This mindset quietly replaced discipline with comfort. The psychological change. Oil didn't just change Nigeria's income. It changed Nigeria's thinking. Government became the biggest spender. Citizens began to depend on allocations. States waited for oil revenue instead of producing value. A rent-based economy was born. And with oil money came something else. Corruption, waste, and the belief that money would never run out. Nigeria was about to enter an era of sudden wealth, without the systems to manage it. If you enjoyed this history and would like to hear more, please subscribe to our channel.